Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucy Handley from the Ridgefield Library. I coordinate the adult programs, and tonight I'm very happy to bring you poems from Connecticut's Four Corners, a program originated by Barb Jennis, our wonderful poet laureate emerita. And Barb's got a new book coming out, a new chapbook. So I want to hear more about that soon. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you, Lucy. Welcome everyone this evening. I'm sure we'll have some more people trickling in. We ask that everybody please mute yourself. We are going to be recording this evening, and we just want to hear, we don't want to have background sounds. And also, if you'd rather not have your face show, you might want to turn off your video. Lucy, I don't know if we go to speaker view, if that would help to just focus on each poet's face as they read. Which would be a wonderful thing.
We are on speaker view on my computer.
Oh, okay, so it's mine then. Good, thank you. Welcome. This is our fifth edition of Poems from Connecticut's Four Corners, which is, of course, always, it seems like a misnomer because we have 5 poets, because we include one from the center Hartford region as well. So, we have 5 wonderful poets here this evening. I just want to give you a little heads up for our June reading. We're going to have 5 fathers reading their poems for Father's Day. So that'll be a kind of a shift up, still from all 5 or 4 corners of Connecticut plus Hartford, but it'll be a lot of fun to hear their work. I'm just going to jump right in and introduce our first poet for this evening, Jim Kelleher. Let me pull up my bio here. Jim Kelleher, poet, essayist, and educator, teaches literature and composition at Northwestern Connecticut Community College in Winston. He earned an MFA degree from New England College in 2007. Jim has published 2 books of poetry, including Quarry from Antrim House. His drama in verse, Mick, a celestial drama, also from Antrim House, can be read as a novel in verse or performed on stage. In former lives, Jim was a teacher in the Boston Public Schools, a caretaker for a summer camp, and a Fillmore East usher, which I'd love to hear more about someday. He lives with Queenie Troy in Goshen, and welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much, Barb. And I thank you on behalf of everyone for all your work to organize these events. I suppose it's like herding cats a little bit, but I thought tonight I'd like to read 3 short political poems. Much of my life I've worked as a carpenter as well as a public school teacher. So I have a lot of poems about work and a lot of poems about school. I don't have that many political poems, and I don't know why I don't have more, because over the past 6 years it's been very difficult to get away from politics. But I thought I would take a trip back in time, and the first poem I'd like to read concerns the Boston Public Schools. You know that our public schools and public libraries, as well as our public newspapers and other media, are the foundation of a democratic society. And to the degree that they're not supported and enabled, our democracy suffers. And my first teaching job was in the Boston schools. I asked as a shop teacher, and I asked the administrator what the chances were that they could employ me. And he said, people quit every day. And that led me into my first position. And when I arrived there, the shop had been vandalized and burnt out. So they put me in a classroom. And not to be deterred, I started teaching poetry there. A few months passed, and other people, I suppose, left, and they came to me and they said, we'd like to make you permanent. We're going to offer you a contract with retroactive pay and benefits. And I said, I'm not taking it. And I said, I told you I'd stay until Christmas. So I was fed up with it, and the principal showed up in my room. And he said, what's this? You're not taking the money? And I said, look, I have no syllabus. I have no books. I have no pencils. What do you want me to teach these kids? And he said, I don't care what you teach them, as long as they're sitting down and learning. And that was where my graduate education began. And there was another teacher there, a Black woman, who was a speech pathologist. And I was the shop teacher, she was the speech pathologist. So we were sort of adjuncts to the hurly-burly of most of it. And I wrote this poem for Julia. Julia was married, and I already mentioned I had a girlfriend at that time. So this is not a romantic poem. You didn't know I cared for you. You didn't trust your feeling, true. But your deep love was dark and strong. And if you doubted me, you were wrong. You were stopped by what you saw. Yellow buses busted like the law. You were accurate to mind that. History lasts so long. Then what? Workers, teachers, bookends, our special children made us friends. Their laughter mocks our pride, our fall. I miss you, your face, your call. There was no black or white solution. Love was for us just our resolution. And that was written, I guess, about 1978, going back in time. And as it will, time passed and the year 2000 arrived. I'm going on my own little magical mystery tour here. And on the 4th of July in the year 2000, I found myself marching across the state of Connecticut behind Jesse Jackson with his Rainbow Coalition. And I wrote this poem and I managed to publish it in the Ridgefield Inquirer, a small local newspaper, which I mention only because of the long tradition that we used to have in this country of publishing poems in newspapers, which many people don't seem to perhaps even to know. But you know, if you want your work to reach people, you got to put it where they can read it. And as I walked behind Jesse Jackson and a mob of people, he stopped at a certain point, and the taunts and the threats from the side of the road were really intense. And I thought to myself, this is one brave guy, because I'm scared back here behind him, and I'm surrounded by people. But he was not to be deterred. So this poem is simply entitled July 4, 2000. And it starts with the quote from Langston Hughes, I too am America. God bless America. If Martin Luther King had survived, or Robert or John Kennedy, they might speak to us, and we might find hope again from Atlantic to Pacific seas. I too celebrate America, but not with fireworks on the 4th of July. I too celebrate America, but each day, I want vaccines for all our children, and especially an AIDS vaccine. I want healthcare for all Americans, freedom of choice for all Americans, and total care for our old and our poor. I want to build homes for all Americans sleeping under cardboard in our cities and in shacks in our fields. In my school books was a declaration for human dignity and liberty. I want funding for public schools, more teachers and artists in schools, and clean fuels. If there were time to list all we must do and need, then I would write a poem to goad, cajole, incite our fighting dead to stand again, and singing, help us to change America, help us to celebrate America once more as the land of the brave and the free. So when I saw that in the newspaper, of course I was thrilled, but I was also scared, because I live in Goshen. I have neighbors who have blue flags, you know. You've seen those blue flags. You see them sometimes in billowing from the backs of rusty pickup trucks. And I actually sent a copy of the poem to Wendell Berry, of all people, and told him I was kind of afraid now. And he was so gracious, he sent me a short note back and he said, well, no one's come after me yet. So I really took heart from that. And moving right along here, this third and final poem is more a contemporary poem written just last year. I've been at Northwestern now for 15 years. I don't know what I would do without it. I mean, I still need the money, but the work is so important. For me, the work is so important. So I wrote a poem for my English 101 students last year as they left. Today, our last class, I proctored your final exam, exhorted you to never quit, trust your intelligences. We shook hands, waved, walked off into summer. So why at 3 a.m. do I wake up in full lecture mode, telling you about literature, how plays should entertain as well as teach, and where values gleam in fictions of rape and gold and butchery? Is that knowledge? Why? My TV tells of war in Ukraine, maybe China, while Congress, its purpose to resist, argue, accuse, and fight yields no compromise, no change, except what is won by guns, lies, or campaign contributions. Which brings me back to writing and the ancient craft of forming symbols to represent sounds. I have no time for cursive. I pound plastic keys in pre-dawn hours, waiting for the dawn to come to fall asleep. New nurses, police officers, technicians, parents, engineers of the 21st century, I envy you. Because I have nothing left to say. Best to get off this professor's stage, this tilting platform. Still, I want to stuff your brains with Oedipus and Moses, Jesus, Odysseus, the Brontes, Huck Finn, Don Quixote. I want you to meet Ahab, Lear, Emily D. and Elizabeth Bishop, who fully defines art and loss as one art. Losing you would be disaster. Waste your time. Read books this shiny intercession. Please sign up for 102. And I assigned an essay to those same, or to the new batch of students just last week. And the good news is they're still pretty optimistic about our country. They still think that we're going to turn things around. So thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure to read for you. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Jim. Wonderful. I can see you behind Jesse Jackson, and I can imagine how scary it must have been. But thank you for your poems, and keep writing political poems. We need them. That's what poets are for. So, moving to our next poet for this evening, I am very happy to welcome Karen Warinsky. Karen Warinsky's work has been published in various anthologies and literary magazines, including the 2019 Ms. Moore anthology. She is the author of Gold in Autumn and Ruby Sunrise, both from Human Error Publishing. In addition, she was a finalist for the 2013 Montreal International Poetry Contest. That's a big one. Karen organizes spoken word and poetry readings at Roseland Park in Woodstock, Connecticut, and at the Rose Room Cafe in Webster, Mass, where I read about a month ago, and it's a wonderful, wonderful venue. And she does both under the name Poets at Large. When she's not writing or organizing readings, Karen will be kayaking. So please welcome Karen Warinsky.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm so glad to be reading with all of you tonight. First, I'm going to read a few pieces from my book that is Golden Autumn. And then I'll be reading a smattering of things, some ponderings and some political work. But I'm going to start out gentle and I'm going to end gentle. And so this first piece is called Lawn Chair, which I hope we'll all be sitting in one soon if this rain stops. And so it's on the lighter side. We'll start lighter. Life from a lawn chair can be lived in full. Listen, birds are speaking. They don't mind if you try to crack the code. Sun and cloud pass overhead. Acknowledge them from your lowly prone position or not, for they are moving on no matter what you do. Rest, rest. Let the cats come circle the chair, lie beside you. Feel all the bits of rebirth poking through the crunched detritus of winter. Green babies, forcing life back into all, buds, shoots, stalks. See parachute puffs of seeds drift toward tender spots to land and grow. They fly all around you in your chair, and you fly too. Race to other times, other places, other springs. When the humid warmth, the breeze, the deep scent of fields filled your senses, and you lived as spring, running free, shoes off, hair wild behind you, living as sky, as earth, as wind. Thank you. That was Lawn Chair. Next, I'm going to read a piece that was first published in a little publication called Light, a journal of photography and poetry. And this is called Spanish Town. And it was written at a time when I was kind of longing to do something new. Let me stand in a dusty Spanish town at 1 o'clock, the hottest of the day, when lunch makes bellies heavy, thoughts fog, and streets clear as people head for siestas. The hum of unseen bugs playing ancient music. Sit in a round-backed wooden chair at a street cafe, sip impossibly bitter coffee from a tiny porcelain cup, decaled with a pattern I would never choose. Watch locals bring their children and packages home. Glimpse lovers walk out of warm stone buildings on their way to supper, shadows climbing across streets. Could find renewal in an unknown place, mysteries flowing over me, language and music juddering through my being, dust of other paths settling on my shoulders, mist from a different sea become my breath. Might drop old expectations, ready myself for a revolution. That's how I was feeling. I taught high school for 16 years, and two of the big highlights for me were trips to Europe, where I actually had never been. And this piece is called Down in Dublin. Glistened green as promised, mesmerizing jewel of legend, pain, and perseverance. Upside down, I kissed the stone, saw moss on the gray castle walls, and a row of golden helmets enshrined in a church, tribute to war that takes all from those leaning on the promise of heaven. An old man played accordion for coins on top the Ring of Kerry. Famine villages revealed their ghosts, while down in Dublin, we danced with locals outside the foggy dew, debated where to dine, listened while Angela Murphy gave directions. 3,000 homeless sleep in Dublin, sliver of the world's billion displaced and dreaming under a common sky, while fortunate emigrants warm in beds with raw memories of Ireland. Solitary, like the monks rising up 700 feet into the sky in the crags of Skellig Michael, they wait on the day, mourn the vanished, try to feel the pluck of Dagda's harp. Thank you. Next, I'm going to read from my new book that came out last summer, and that book is called Sunrise Ruby. Both of my books are published by Human Error Publishing in Massachusetts. This book is in 3 sections. It starts with personal poems, digs into politics, and then ends with hope. I like to end with hope. And so I'm going to read the very, very first piece for you in the book, and it's called Getting Here. By the time you get here to this place, desires are still too heavy, and you realize it may not be possible in the time left after the washing, ironing, shopping, arranging, sustaining, and dusting, to get those moments, those quiet, inspired micro moments where ideas can float in for digestion and you can shoot them back out like smart little stars shining in a sky of your creation. Background blue, background black, there for anyone to look up and see. It's not a secret once you write it down, send it around with a keystroke. Connection becomes real and you see the proof on the page that you are here. Like a lot of you, I've been very disturbed by, some of the things that have been happening in our country in recent years. And I have written a lot about that. And so this piece comes from some of those recent events, and it's called Things Get Lost. Things get lost, memories fade, too much history to remember, too many ancient kings, dust-entombed cities, battles won and lost and won again, countries and capitals renamed. Parchment crumbles, stone cuts soften, ancestors fall from view. We forget their names, beautiful names chosen by careful mothers, bestowing benedictions on babies for a plentiful, happy future. And so today, before things get lost, say their names. Brianna, Philando, Trayvon, Ahmad, Tatiana. Harmonic syllables rolling out in a cadence of hope, unmet in this world. Say their names. And then this next one is a little bit caustic, I guess, which I can be sometimes. And it's called Attention Span. Sometimes God seems to have a dad's attention. The dad who lets you jump on the couch, have a sip of beer, hold an army knife when you were 5. Occasionally, this dad is very involved, angry even, shouting at you to do better. Other times, he's napping while you pick on your little brother. These genocides are ever present, ever growing, solutions missing from political conversations as Rohingya are killed on the roads, Syrians survive in rubble, their escaped countrymen lingering in Moria, a dismal failed camp on the Isle of Lesbos. American homeless are unwelcome, unwanted, pressed out of even the dankest cement city corridors, chased from marshy spaces on the edges of towns, tents and possessions become fuel for a bonfire. A mother, a loving mother, would not leave her children to wallow and die in distress. Only an inattentive dad, eyes glued to the ball game, waiting to see if his pool pick will win. Okay, for a few years, Syria was on my mind. Before the recent earthquake over there in Turkey and, the war that's ground on over there for about 12 years. And so I just dug into the history there, and I've been very disturbed by what the world has allowed to happen. And this is written for the Syrian people. It's called Forgotten City. Life returned to the stubbled hills. Oh, I should introduce this a little better. So I read an article that said that archaeologists in Syria are upset because the refugees are now living in the ancient ruins. They have nowhere else to go. And so the archaeologists were upset because the ancient ruins were getting disturbed. So I didn't set that up right. But anyway, I'll start over. Forgotten City. Life returned to the stubbled hills, to the ancient stones, though archaeologists with lithified hearts bewail. Refugees are moving the rocks. Who cares about refugees? Syrians, pommeled and pounded for years now, live among the ruins of Byzantine, ruined themselves. Nestling against half walls, rose pink in the dawn, they pen their animals, prop their tents, hear the wind call their ancestors. Nefeli, Justice, Theodora, Kadir, hear it repeat old glories of the past in this Northwest land. Assad's poisoned hand not yet touching this final sanctuary. While cement-filled historians and archaeologists fret about the displacement of the marble, the zahar, the basalt, the integrity of the site, as the people maneuver themselves inside the consequence of war. And Barb, I guess I have, thank you, a few more minutes, couple more minutes. This is a piece that was just published in a journal called the Lothlorien Journal. And excuse me, I'm working on a chapbook that I'd like to include this in. My chapbook is called Dining with War, and it comes from the fact that one day I realized I take a lot of meals watching the news, and I'm always watching destruction and warfare while I'm eating. And then I thought about all the other times I've had life battles around a meal, and as we all maybe do. And so this is called Judy Woodruff Makes It Palatable. Some nights I can almost forget what I'm doing as I put the fork to my lips, take a bite, and taste whatever deliciousness there is in our cooking. Our family room is comfortable. We have new carpet, a wood stove, and 2 well-upholstered sofas. Now that the kids are gone, we take our meals there, each on a couch, glass of wine, glass of beer, while the dulcet tones of fair Judy Woodruff soothe us so we can swallow, while Syria is blown up. Citizens in Myanmar are beaten with clubs, and protesters in Hong Kong are chased from the streets, bloody and bruised. Judy is implacable, petite, blonde, preserved, reserved. And she helps us stay just numb enough to get the food down, not make a fuss, not really need to leave the room whenever she warns us. This content may make some viewers uncomfortable. Barb, if I have time, I'll wrap up with one final one. And it's on page 80 in Sunrise Ruby. And it's called The New Earth. When things went south that time, psychics and channelers informed me my thinking was faulty. They weren't wrong, and the realization of how much I didn't know surrounded me like quicksand as I struggled for truth. No longer in the bog, now I think there's not time to fulfill my quest for knowledge, getting there taking longer than any childhood car ride, stuck in the back seat, hot and annoyed. The new earth, 5D, 9D, hologram, graviton, duality, M-theory, string, or brain, pull back far enough, and all is a pulsing blob, explaining nothing, making me wish I was 12 again, standing in the foyer of the church, everything hushed and holy, looking up at the big painting of Jesus, feeling comfortable and happy, feeling like I understood what he wanted me to do, that I could do those things. The yarn of the world is tangled, a skein tossed into the bottom of the basket, hard to unwind. And we tug on pieces we can see that are close to us, but wonder if we have time to get it undone, lay it out in a line, wind it up again, carefully, knit it into something useful. Life's dark glasses prevent clear vision, but moving, just moving and doing can bring us to a place where faithful steps can still walk a hopeful path. I hope it's so.
Thank you, Karen, for a wonderful reading. I love the Forgotten City poem about the refugees daring to move the rocks. So, wow. And I have to say also, I often think of God as a father whose attention is somewhat divided. So thank you for your poem. I'm happy now to welcome, let's see, go down here. Christie Max Williams. Christie Max Williams's debut poetry collection, The Wages of Love, won the 2022 William Meredith Poetry Prize. He is also a writer and award-winning actor. Christie co-founded and for many years directed the Arts Cafe Mystic, which is in its 29th year of presenting programs featuring readings by America's best poets, complemented by music from New England's finest musicians. His poetry has been published in journals, magazines, and anthologies, and has won the Grolier Prize, placed second in the Connecticut River Review Contest, and was a finalist for the National Poetry Series. He lives in Mystic, Connecticut, where he and his wife raised their daughter and son. So please, if you would, and I'm going to put his bio in the chat, including a link to his website where you can order a copy of his most recent book. So welcome, Christie.
Thank you, Barb. And thanks also to the Ridgefield Library. This strikes me, having been in the audience for several of these evenings, as an exceptional series. And I'm grateful to be here with you. I'd like to share with you, give you a taste, really, of my book, The Wages of Love. If you've had a certain kind of education, if you've suffered through a certain sort of education, you'll recognize in the title of the book, The Wages of Love, an echo of St. Paul's letter to the Romans, in which he famously declared that the wages of sin is death. Well, I have other fish to fry with St. Paul in mind. The title poem of The Wages of Love is The Wages of Love in 2020. This is very much a COVID poem, if you will. Afterward, we sprawled, a fleshy heap, molten, warm, sticky here and there, aroma thick and feral. Arms were gone askew, legs entangled, hands irrelevant. Amid the mess of bedding, skin felt timeless, cheek pressed to shoulder, belly to butt, lips undone, turned blousy. Time itself undone. Time itself irrelevant. Well-being had become both mindless and mindful. We all but immortal. Gone the government's venality. Gone its daily lies. We, a Congress of contentment. We, the president of pleasure. At once full and void, an end, a new beginning. The wages of love is life. So yes, indeed, this is a book very much about love, though I would not refer to the poems as love poems. Here's a poem about the love for a friend. Where are you, friend? I need your voice, your face. I long to watch you listening to me, to know myself a glowing commonplace in your affection, to feel you simply be. Oh, meet me at the usual cafe. Yes, the one where I am always late, where the wine makes no demands on what we say, where we can be a night to celebrate. At the same quiet table sit the ghosts of our best selves, waiting to be moved to laughter. Or is it tears? For them, let's toast the luck and mystery of being loved. Later, passing shuttered shops and bars, suppose we stop, look up, there might be stars. That sonnet was called Stars for Susan. It's true, as Barb said, that I am an actor as well as a poet. I spend a lot of my life memorizing lines for roles I do, memorizing poems as well. The way I do that is I walk my neighborhood declaiming these lines or these poems out loud for all to hear if they step outside to do that. If you do that, if you walk around your neighborhood with a book in hand, declaiming out loud, you're apt to develop a reputation. This poem is called Blue Heart. Hailed by name as I walked up the narrow road that passed his place, as I looked up from the open book I had in hand, core struck, heart on edge, though not quite zero at the bone, as he with a salesman's smile said to me, "You're into poetry, right?" Were they fighting words, I wondered? Was flight an option? Or did I have the right to find my notoriety amusing? And really, what the hell could he be smiling at? "You're into poetry, right?" "Why do you ask?" I might have parried. "What do you mean?" I thought to answer. "Well, yes," is what I said. A quarter century we had been first name acquainted, though I didn't think I liked the guy. Too glib, too friendly, too damned pleased with life. "Come here," he beckoned me onto his patch of lawn. His dooryard, Whitman would have termed it. And so help me, there were lilacs blooming. So I joined him on the grass by a massive boulder there, 8 feet across and high. "A remnant of the Ice Age," he was saying. Boulder, Ice Age, glacier in retreat, to all of it I nodded my encouragement as he invited me to circumnavigate the rock, as he explained how he'd just cleared it of a generation's brush and vines. And he went on, describing how he'd taught his kids to climb the rock, showing me the hand and footholds, to which I smiled with something like goodwill. "But look at this," he stopped us in our glacial tour, pointing to an indentation in the rock where long ago a child's hand had painted a blue heart, the height and size of a childish head. "I cried when I discovered it," he said. His face was open, touchingly sincere. And then he said, "You could write a poem about it." I might have laughed out loud, might have shaken my head in proud refusal, but only a heart of stone could be unmoved by his request. Though in my silent pride, I scoffed at how he thought that poems happen. Robert Frost called poetry play for mortal stakes. I doubt the stakes Frost had in mind include blue hearts. And yet, something was happening by that rock, something I did not understand but somehow felt. He was a man who'd spoken tender thoughts to me, and I'd been humbled as I heard them. "We'll see," I said, and shrugged the way that men do. If not a promise, it was something like consent. But in the weeks to come, I could not do it, could not make a poem of that damned blue heart. Though my walks still take me by the rock, I cannot find a poem there. Perhaps it's his to write. Blue Heart. It seems to me that nothing is edgier than love. nothing more political, nothing more multifarious. Let me see if I can suggest that to you. This poem is set in New York City, where I had the good luck to live for many, many years, where I met my beloved and fell in love. This doesn't concern any of that. This poem is called Immortality While Awaiting the Subway. What did she see, that young and purely solitary woman standing in the cool gray silence of the subway stop, as though composed by a photographer, book in hand, intently reading, her coral lips and quilted sky blue coat, the only colors in that timeless light? What did she see as, looking up amid the turning of a page, her eyes met mine? Perhaps I was a man no longer of an age to hope for her reciprocal regard, though the truth is, it was not at her that I'd been looking. Or should I say, not only at her, but at the book in which she was so deeply steeped, I had to know its title. My eyes were good, though not as good as they used to be. What is? So as if to scan the twilight track for the train I hoped would be delayed, I took an oblique step not quite towards her, until just glimpsing the elusive cover of her book, just as her languid hand turned over that transforming page, just as her breasts rose up and subtly set on the impassioned breath she drew, which seemed in turn to lift her chin, the dying cadence in a melody of motion I could not help but follow, until her eyes met mine. What did I see, if not a shining instant of her wonder, if not the lingering light reflected from whatever fire burned within the words just read, which in the moment of my marveling was suddenly eclipsed by her perception of whatever darkness skulked in my beholding mind, was smothered by a gathering gloom of fear, contempt, and violation. For something had been violated. And in the mute, unmeaning moment of that cool gray gulf of time and space, she turned her back on me, retreated up the platform, then deftly recomposed herself, her sky blue back still turned, the open book once more in hand. The very silence tittered at my shame, even as a plaintive voice within me cried, "No, please, you don't understand. I'm not like other men. I too read books. For me, as well as you, a fateful train will all too soon arrive." I might have crossed to where she stood and might have said these things, but history cast its iron shadow even on my dumb paralysis, since in New York it's dangerous for strangers at a subway stop to seek an understanding. And yet, how can I not remember that her eyes were blue and that the title of her book was Immortality? Immortality, of course, being among the great novels by Milan Kundera. Let me change the pace here a little bit. One section of The Wages of Love, there it is. The Wages of Love concerns family matters. And this poem recounts my earliest memory, a recurring memory. It's called The Bath. For you aficionados of form, it's written in terza rima. You'll remember that's the form that Dante invented for his Commedia. The Bath. All at once, as in a waking dream, like a pansensual movie in my mind, I feel the warm water, the mild steam. I see the sink I sat in, the day that shined into the kitchen window above the sink. I hear a voice close from behind, my mother's softly singing, tender link to the hand pressed firmly on my chest, holding me upright. My skin is pink. A warm, wet cloth has just progressed across my back. I breathe a faint, sweet scent. I'm naked, a baby. Then it ends. The rest is gone. The wet, the light, the song, all spent. My mother gone, her voice, her touch, the feel of comfort, of goodness. What has it meant? Was it memory or dream? It feels real. What's left is luminous calm, deep peace, and yearning. Yearning for more, enough to heal, enough to make a meaning, to release in you and all the world this calm, this peace. The Bath. My final poem is a new poem, still enduring the usual editorial process. Before starting it, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. We poets are all desperate for an audience, and we're grateful for you for being our audience tonight. This poem is called The Speed of Light. From across the hurried room, in a lover's blooming fury, she flashes her fiery eyes at you. And in the instant, you intuit that this bright soul-searing burst from deep within her eyes is moving at the speed of light. 186,000 miles per second, the same speed starlight travels at. And you recall that light from distant stars departed long ago, years and years ago, traveling near 6 trillion miles each year. And having journeyed over light years, arrives to Earth for you to see, through which you peer into the starry past. And in this moment's musing, you see the flashing from her eyes must have left a brief but measurable time ago. Time past, your past, a loutish past, albeit. And yet your eyes and brain synapses are also working at the speed of light, are in the instant's passing time, delaying further nonetheless your comprehension of the ire her eyes are firing to convey, or have conveyed in fact, are pushing further in the past the whole damn flashing moment, which begs the cosmic question whether you should even bother with responding to what even now is rapidly receding into the past. Your past, her past, every past, but increasingly the distant past. And after all, what does it mean to live within the moment? Which moment? And even though all this is happening at the speed of light, you have no time to note that the delay in your response to the not quite yet forgotten flashing of her eyes is registering on her lovely face as smoldering exasperation. And yet, because you newly comprehend that time may not exist outside the mind, because you grasp that everything, but most especially she, is made of star stuff, you feel yourself falling like a comet, madly, brilliantly in love with her again, wanting her forever at the speed of light. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, wow. Some gorgeous lines. I love A Congress of Contentment on that first poem. That really stuck with me. And I love the Blue Heart poem. What poet hasn't had someone say, you should write a poem about that? But a charming, charming poem that kind of turned the table on them. So thank you. Next, we have Marilyn Johnston, who I hope, Marilyn, when you begin in talking, you tell us a little bit also about your upcoming art exhibition. Marilyn is one of many poets here in Connecticut who have also visual arts in their wheelhouse. So I hope you'll tell us a little bit about what's coming up. Okay, so Marilyn Johnston is the author of 2 books of poetry published by Antrim House Books, Silk Fist Songs and Weight of the Angel. Also, her chapbook, Against Disappearance, was a finalist in the 2001 poetry competition of Red Green Press. Marilyn's poems have been published in such journals as the South Carolina Review, Worcester Review, Poet Lore, Atlanta Review, and Rattle. Over the years, her work has garnered 6 Pushcart Prize nominations. Marilyn left a long-time corporate career at Cigna to put her poetry center stage. She founded the Wintonbury Poetry Series, which she ran for 20 years at Bloomfield Library. So welcome, Marilyn.
Excuse me. Thank you, Barb. I'm really delighted to be with you. I want to commend you on starting your series. It's been wonderful attending these. And I have to comment that we've united through your efforts, poets from all around Connecticut. I don't know another art venue that's really looked at Connecticut as a whole like that and brought people into each other's awareness. So I'm very pleased to be part of this. You did give me a chance to mention this art, excuse me, exhibit, poetry reading combination. There's a total of 7 of us, I believe. It's the brainchild of our Peggy Dietz Shea, who runs poetry events at the Vernon Arts Center in Vernon, Connecticut. So please come out for this. It's May 27th at 2 o'clock. We're having the reading of the artist poets. It runs from 2 to 4. There'll be refreshments and you'll be able to look at our art and listen to poetry. I can't remember all the names offhand. Antoinette Brimbell will be there, myself, Sherry Bedingfield, and Margaret Plaganis off the top of my head. So please come out on May 27. Okay, I thought it was fitting that I ended up tonight representing the center of Connecticut because I really have lived nowhere else. I was born and raised in Hartford, and I found myself lacing back and forth over the Connecticut River. We lived in the south Marlborough area, later West Hartford, then a lot of years in Hartford, East Hartford for high school and early married life. And then Cigna brought me to Bloomfield 38 years ago. So I've been north, south, east, and west. And one of the commonalities is that river. I love the Connecticut River. So my first poem is featuring that river. It's entitled At the Confluence Below Hartford. And you'll hear an Emerson quote here in the middle. So it goes like this. At the confluence below Hartford. I've lived around and around the circle of greater Hartford. beside the Capitol Dome, over Glastonbury's Apple Hill, and up to Bloomfield's Mountain Ridge. Today, I'm at the confluence, youth coursing forward to age touching back. Yellow leaves keep falling on the Hockenham, catching at the bare roots of half-submerged trees. That a man is stronger than a city, that his solitude is more prevalent and beneficent than the concert of crowds, Emerson said, speaking of deep man. I identified with deep man most of my youth by default, not finding words about a woman's heroism. I wanted to carry off the poor figure I set as I set out at 18 to reconfigure her, re-begin the beginning. In spring, every year before words come, I'm here, where one brook and one small river flare into the great tidal river below Hartford. Here, emptying, carrying, but never finishing. Beside the skyscrapers, highway exchanges, flying bridges, I seek Sam Colt's wild blue onion launching its kicking pony against the sky. I should have explained the famous Colt blue onion is over the river and it ends in a gold pony at the top for the Colt. My second poem is kind of a quirky philosophical poem. Its title is just the word it, but it's the word as it's used in sentences like it's raining or it's 3 o'clock. It's one of those words, it's a ghost in the language. It doesn't seem to have an antecedent. So I took it to terms with this poem. It's called It. It eats. It works. It processes food. It writes poems. It is writing a poem now. Writes poems that can be poems and poems that can never be poems. It underlies existence, weighs the earth. It finds the last quark, rolls up particulars, flings out a borealis, drops a hangnail. It begins and ends without beginning or ending. It is a supernova burst, a krill, molting, microscopic shell. It has all it once lacked and lacks all it has. It is the it you are while you are, and the it you are when you are no longer you. It is the pen between the fingers, the hand shadowing the page. It is the marriage between word and reality, and the eyes looking back at whose eyes? Its eyes. That's okay. I'm returning to Hartford. As you know, Hartford was called is called the insurance capital of the world. I myself, as Barb mentioned, put in almost 20 years at Cigna. And then I got to the point where I knew I needed to set a new path, take my poetry seriously, which I'd been writing for years. So this is called The Daughter of Insurance. The men worked factory forges, deep fires, grease and roar. Women filled the desks of Hartford's insurance rows. 6 aunts, mother, sister, cousins, friends. I swore in long summer until its swarms engulfed me anyway. It was the only ladder going to identity. I took it. I could not invent anything different until I tried. Loneliness ushered to a struggling rise apart, collecting life policies. The sole greenery, corporate, corridor plants in white pots, and a lone weeping cherry in static dance in the glassed-in courtyard. I drew close to its silent, whispering branches, stood foot to foot in its pebbled square, breathed its silver frame of sky. The day I left, I was reborn, orphaned, but free. I'd like to switch gears to my father. He was an outlier, and by that I mean he wasn't born in Connecticut. He was from Illinois. Was the son of Helsinki immigrants, and he was brought to Connecticut by World War II in the draft, where he met my mother. So this is called Instrumental, and it's for my father in memoriam. Instrumental. Where did it come from, that violin, lifted tenderly from its velvet case on the rec room floor and held high in rare performance that came and vanished? He nestled chin on the chin rest, his tall bulk on the couch edge, knees spread, torso leaning forward, face a study in serious concentration, like a star in a philharmonic. Those workman's hands, fingers danced on 4 delicate strings, or swiftly plied the bow, which he'd rosined lightly with an amber stone. I know he'd never had a lesson, but what he taught himself, a lilting jig, foot tapping, or improvised sweet melody, vibrant with sorrow. He conjured and listened close, inviting it forth, that violin, to speak violin. He played by ear. He did that with everyone. I think you could detect what I call a little Finnish melancholy. He carried that quality. So my next poem will probably have notes of Finnish melancholy, and it's musical. I chose to attempt the blues form. It's, of course, our proud tradition of blues and jazz, and I decided, well, it's American born, I should attempt it. So it comes out it's my way. It's called Necessities Blues. Nothing better than a sad tune. We make our music rue. We understand a sad song. We make our music rue. If we were singing Eden's Dawn Break, we'd be singing that song blue. We didn't make life easy. We called it sweat and toil. We didn't make life easy. Found but sweat and toil. I've seen the visions dry up before the goods were spoiled. I've seen through daylight empty, knew not why or how. I've seen through daylight empty, knew not the why or how, worked for God to see me. Don't know why I'm working now. Freshness way deep down things, I'd be the last to know. If there's a freshness, way deep down things, I'd be the last to know. Get so turned around behind time, there's no place for me to go. We like our silence, don't we? Well, there's something ain't been sung. We like our silence, don't we? There's something ain't been sung. You keep on singing, baby, out where the heart is flung. Okay, I've got a couple left. This one switches to my mother, who, as I mentioned, was from the Glastonbury, Marlborough area. Irish roots going back to 1840. So naturally, this poem concerns potatoes, the Irish famine that brought us here. It's called Potato Pantoum, which is a form, as you will know, that repeats a lot of lines. Potato Pantoum for my mother, in memoriam. Fill a saucepan, wash potatoes, peel, cook, eat potatoes. Obey a different voice, how? When it's time, my own time, believe it before the blank page. Can't I obey a different voice than hers? Turn, change, choose, transform, believe it, then show before the white page. Set new tasks, wait for faith. Turn, change, choose, transform. When will it be time, my voice in earnest? Settle in faith and wait. And in the meantime, fill a saucepan, wash potatoes, peel, cook, eat potatoes. When it comes my time, my own, will I know it? She always shushed my well-earned voice, too loud. Fill a saucepan, wash, peel, cook potatoes, eat potatoes. I forged a self against her way. Now she has died across this poem. I've no one to make a sound for. I did forge a self as she aided and defied it. I clasp her jewels, her furniture, her orphaned things. I've no one to write of, or to make a sound for. Mystery of how she saw me went to her grave. I have only the things she left, no direction, and all I write is aloneness, in our aloneness. The mystery of how she saw me went with her, and the journey ahead still unfound. I have only the things she left me, no direction. Fill a saucepan, wash, peel, cook potatoes, eat potatoes. Okay, my final poem of the evening is, it's entitled On the Voyage Out, and it's for my siblings in memoriam. On the voyage out. Is that home plate starboard, that paper bag we chased, still rolling away with the wind? Make the orbit before initiating slow descent to earth, full of awe, sandwiched between mom's roses and the garbage cans. Point finding, 3 faces in a row, backs to the inclined windshield, riding the vast green hood of our Dodge. Inside, we'd spin the wheel, tap dials, steer the huge finned ship into star-studded space. How we'd rise with it one day. One day, I'll stop declaiming the past to ghosts. What's left of me in the dark, eerie moonlight, my brother navigates, my sister steers. and I stay awake, spinning on the outer arm of a spiral nebula. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. By the way, I put some more information about the other artists who are also participating in that wonderful artist poet exhibition. I loved the form poems. I have never heard of the blues form, so thank you for that. It sounded wonderful. It sounded very bluesy, obviously. And I also really liked your potato pantoum. So thank you so much for sharing your work. We have one more poet this evening that I look forward to introducing. Brian Clements is author or editor of more than 15 collections and online projects, including Bullets into Bells, Poets and Citizens Respond to Gun Violence, published by Beacon Press in 2017. This anthology of poems by major poets, including 5 former US Poets Laureate, includes responses to each poem by gun violence survivors, activists, and political, religious, and community leaders, including Samaria Rice, mother of Tamir, Lucy McBath, mother of Jordan Davis, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Jody Williams, and Senator Chris Murphy. It is definitely an anthology for our times, as we've seen come to bear several times in the last few days. Brian is also the author of Every Atom, Reflections on Walt Whitman at 200. His most recent collection of poems is A Book of Common Rituals from Quail Press. He currently coordinates the low residency MFA in creative writing and professional writing at Western Connecticut State University. So please, if you would, welcome Brian Clements.
Thank you, Barb. And thank you to the Ridgefield Library for hosting this event and this series of events, and to all of you for being here and staying here this long. I know your ears and heads and perhaps your rear ends are possibly a little fatigued at this point, so I hope to bring this in less than 15 more minutes. Can you hear me okay? I tend to be a bit of a quiet talker, so I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. Okay. So my first book, which came out in 1997, I think, somewhere around there, like many books and many first books especially, was really just a collection of poems that I had at the time that I thought fit together pretty well. But my other books and chapbooks have all been project books of some kind. So the shape and the structure and the content of the books were pretty much defined by whatever the project was. But I currently find myself without a project and with a lot of poems, and thinking about how those poems might fit together in a book. So I chose some poems tonight that I think might be fitting into a group that will go into a book sometime soon. I think the poems that I chose for tonight are in some way all connected by the theme of different kinds of loss. The first one is called Prolegomena to Any Future Poem. I wanted to write a poem that would end with the line, "Now tell me, what have I lost?" The idea being that regardless of what I actually have lost, I really have lost nothing. Or that despite all losses, something important is preserved, as though being alive were the only thing that matters. Or on the other hand, as though the sum of all loss is incalculable. Rumi asks, what have I ever lost by dying? As though there's something after dying, as though something of the self persists, or as though the self is just the rock, the plant, the animal that precede and endure, or as though there is nothing in living that can be lost because nothing ever is had. It's all lost already, as though nothing belongs anywhere, or everything belongs nowhere. A universe of particles drifting out toward the edges of somethingness, fizzling off into nothing. Now, tell me. I grew up mostly in Arkansas, was born in Memphis, lived in North Mississippi and Arkansas, an area that down there we call the Mid-South. And this poem is built on a lot of the racialized mythology from that area, or really the racialized mythology of our country. And it's called Southern Fiction. In the novel, I did not write a young woman named Teresa is a young man named Terrence, their skin the color of the Mississippi River between Memphis and West Memphis. Their father is white, their mother is black. They have visions of Indian massacres in colonial Kentucky. They dream of Japanese internment in the Arkansas Delta. They want to murder the murderer of their mother's father, want to riot in Elaine and hang with their brothers and come back to haunt Riceland and Uncle Ben. The earth between England and Des Arc is thick with blood and bones. The trail extends through burial mounds, Ozark, into Indian territory. The battle flag of the North Virginia Army, strong in the wind of Nathan Bedford Forest City and Alpena. Their heart is full of silt from Arkansas and Mississippi. Their belly houses 4 little girls and 3 young men. Their neck bears marks of chain attached to pickup. Their back is scored, their feet are ripped, their hands as rough as uncleared scrub, as filthy as Louisiana purchase. Their throat is full of Arkabutla backwater. Their voice beyond my range of hearing. I cannot tell you what they say. I could not write the novel. The novel always already was written in a language I cannot speak. Just a few notes about some place names in this poem. The word Arkansas comes from possibly either Quapaw, meaning downriver people, or the Sioux, meaning people of South Wind. Mississippi comes from Ojibwe, meaning big river, or possibly Choctaw, meaning most ancient of rivers. Kentucky from the Iroquois, meaning meadowland, or the Wyandot, meaning land of tomorrow. Arkabutla, which is the name of a man-made lake in Mississippi, from the Choctaw, meaning pulverized bottom, like a pulverized stream or creek bottom. And the word Oklahoma is probably a word that was invented by combining 2 Choctaw words, upla, meaning person, and huma, meaning red. Alpha Omega. I know nothing about ceramics, about sewing, about crystalline architecture. I know nothing about cryptocurrency, nor code, nor the heart rates of spies. I do not know how to paint, or ride, or to repair any kind of engine. I know nothing of sleep in an alley, nor how a hunting knife feels ripping through pelt and muscle and gore. I know something of the ease of fog that lies on a hillside, the free flow of brook and duck beneath a bridge, the log half submerged, half emergent into the road. I know ash, bole, carp, deer, elm, fig, gar, hibiscus, Indian blanket, juniper. I know kudzu, lily, magnolia, nandina, oak, pecan, Queen Anne's lace, red-tailed hawk. I know sparrow, tomatillo, upland cotton, Venus flytrap, the X of all my gaps, the Y of memory turning south and outward, the Z of my turning away. There are more things to consider then. After the child died, the woman had signs of disaster about her. Debris everywhere, downed lines, no water, no shelter. The black telephone had a cry like a hollow universe. The child plots her life to the end, uses what she has at hand to unsnare riddles, branches tied to helmets, a bomb buckled around a waist, a skirt raised and legs kicking up a dance with the red-headed boy. When the flood comes, the story goes, some of us become the words of our lovers. Some of us are side notes, relegated to a blur in the corner of the eye of a man who walks down the street on a Sunday and is blessed. Do not tarry, do not turn. A woman is coming loose from the dark. This one is called Out on the Town. Taking out the trash, I heard a noise like the scaffold of night collapsing. I looked around at the pavane of stars projected on windshields, the neighborhood dark as a singularity. I did not recognize the black kangaroo as our mailbox, nor the strange aluminum aura as the lake from a neighbor's sprinkler, nor the bilateral elongated smudge as someone standing in the vegetable garden, someone like a person very close to me, yet alien, someone upright but buckled under a great weight, someone hunched over a map that has grown to twice the size of the neighborhood, illegible with icons, symbols, arrows, erasures, elisions, emphasis, warnings, notes. And the last poem I'm going to read for you is called Osmium. Some of you may be familiar with osmium, which is, I believe, the densest of all the elements and one of the hardest. Osmium. If you look back far enough, or so this theory goes, you can begin to build a model of what happened at the beginning of your life that led inexorably to this. Led inexorably, people say, because inexorare, not outplead, or unavoidable, that is, not susceptible to prayer. Led inexorably, we keep saying because ed and ex together sound like dead, because it's nicer to believe there was a reason, that there is a structure. And yes, there is a structure, but structure doesn't mean solid. Everything falls apart on small scales. Even osmium, harder than diamond, from quark's eye level casts an exploded sky of molecules latticed what seems like infinite distances in all directions. If you look back far enough, you'd think you could see to the center, but there is no center, any more than if you look back far enough, you could see stars emerge like sprites from vast clouds of gases to dance around a black absence, the smoky fingers of God's tipping pendulums, the original spark. The first light blossomed 15 billion years ago, everything just a small packet of seeds, and then a burgeoning of limbs across the night, because everything was night. And in the night came the moment a ventricle jumped inside her womb, the small lone thing that stands in for everything, because everything is unavailable. And if you look back far enough through the universe of prayers, you begin to see everything is a sieve. Thank you.
Wow. Brian, check the chat. I mean, there was a question about if there's somewhere we could see or read these poems. Are any of them currently in journals or online?
I think the Southern fiction poem may have been published at a journal called OL. I don't think any of the others are published yet, but I can send a link to Barb if I can find it. And you can share it.
Yeah, just a wonderful, yeah, as someone just said, it's going to be a great book. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming this evening. I always hate it when it ends because it's such a rich night with such a diversity of voices. So I'm hoping you enjoyed it as well. I hope you'll come back in June to hear our Father's Day poets, which will be a lot of fun. We'll be on break for July and August, but then we'll return in September. Thank you, Lucy Hanley at Ridgefield Library. Thank you, Ridgefield Library, for your great advocacy for poetry. And everyone stay healthy and come on back.